Mr. Tiberi, you
Thank you,
recognize.
Mr. Chairman. Today's hearing is about how we get families, individuals off of the social safety net into the workforce. That shouldn't be a partisan issue. And I think we can all agree over the last 50 years, it hasn't worked so well. And I think about my own life. I was on the free and reduced lunch program. There's more kids in the Columbus School on the free and reduced lunch program today than there were when I was a kid. There's a bigger need for affordable housing today than when I was a kid. There are more people who want a job that can't get a job today than when I was a kid in my community. And yet we have spent millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars at the federal and state level. Ms. Van Zandt, God bless you. You put a face behind reality. And you have shown that it can work. And you have transitioned from your own experience to trying to help others. I've looked at people in the eye, to your point, who've been provided all sorts of opportunity, but have this glazed look in their eye because they're trapped in poverty.
It's misdirected.
Trapped in poverty. And it's not misdirected, Mr. Rangel. We all care about trying to get people out of poverty. But try to think outside the box is not mean and disgraceful. It's trying to figure out what works. You know, one of the things that I just did with Representative Kine on a bipartisan basis is introduce a bill called Investing in Opportunity Act. Mr. Engler, I'd like to have you take a look at it, because what it simply does is it says we have distressed communities, by the way, both urban and rural throughout America. And a new report came out yesterday by a bipartisan think tank that said 3 out of every 10 U.S. counties in America continued to lose jobs after the Great Recession between 2010 and 2014. That's a third of our counties have continued to lose jobs. And what are they? There are distressed counties. There are poorest counties. They're urban and they're rural. What do they lack? They lack private investment. They lack jobs. So we can continue to throw money, but if a person doesn't have a job, they're not going to get out of poverty, to your point, Ms. Van Zandt. But Mr. Engler, to go even further, this is unbelievable. The percentage of U.S. counties seeing more businesses closed than open has tripled since the 90s. Those same counties. I get a call from a third-generation business owner in Columbus, Ohio last week, after the vice president visited our county to announce some overtime rules, that said, this rule, I'm not making this up, we could call him to testify, this rule is going to actually reduce the number of jobs that we have. So here's a regulation, a well-intended one, by the way, that's actually going to affect the very people who we're talking about today. So Mr. Engler, you were governor. How did you engage the private sector? How do we better engage the private sector in areas that need it most, those distressed communities in rural and urban America that have the highest unemployment rates, that have the highest number of people on our social safety net work? And in particular, how do we ensure that opportunity reaches those individuals that Ms. Van Zandt talked about?
Well, we had, at one point in the 90s, we got our unemployment down down about 3.3% in Michigan, but there were a lot of things going on. We had gotten very non-competitive as a state, and so we were changing the tax code. We were trying to improve the education system. We were trying to improve other services, and we tried to reduce the cost of government. We shrunk non-public safety employees in the government by almost 20% during a decade-long period. So you have to have this healthy private sector, and you mentioned, I mean, you mentioned small business. For the first time in history, we had 3 consecutive years where we lost more small businesses closed their door than opened. That's never been the case, and that wasn't in 08 and 09. That was a couple of years ago. I think it last year might have turned. We had 3 years in a row. Never had that. Small businesses are job engines, and small business where a lot of people can get started without a lot of experience. We also engaged the private sector to work with a lot of the volunteer agencies. We found that in some cases, getting somebody to go to Goodwill, start working there, was a way back into the workforce. And then that little bit of training gave them some job experience that could let them go to the hardware store and maybe work there, or the drugstore. It's all hands on deck when you're trying to deal with this.